This episode of Ask Zach is a collaboration with True Tone.
Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the True Tone Lounge. Today we are in the studio of Vince Gill, probably one of the most celebrated and award-winning musicians of our time.
I just collude with the Russians. It's the only reason I got any of that stuff.
That's the only reason. Well, we're gonna talk guitars today, and we're gonna have a good time.
Cool.
And if we don't have a good time, then we're gonna quit.
Then it's our fault.
Yeah, it's our fault. So, of course, we're gonna talk about guitars, but I have to talk about your singing, your voice, because that's kind of what got your foot in the door. So, when was it that people started saying that? Because of course, people, little kids can perform, and no matter what, they think they're cute. But when was it that you started really getting noticed for your voice?
Well, it was later. It took me a long time to gather the courage to sing.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't mind playing the guitar because I could keep my head down and I could hide.
Yeah.
But once I started to try to sing, I was much more bashful than I ever knew, and then I realized I could sing okay, and the more I did it, the better I got at it, and that's kind of what I knew. If I was going to have a shot at doing anything, it would be my voice. There's a bunch of guitar slingers out there that can all play me under the table, and I knew that from day one. But that voice, I knew I could. It would just be, a lot of the bluegrass gigs that I got early in my teenage years, I played whatever was left over in the band. I played mandolin in one band because they didn't have one. I played banjo, I played guitar, and just depended on what they needed, but they always wanted the singer, So.
Yeah.
And then as I, was playing with a bunch of different bands, Pure Prairie League and a few other folks like that, I was a side man for a while and still do that, in sessions and things. But when I decided I was going to try to be an artist and find my way into the country music world, it's not a long list of guitar heroes, that are shredders and players and all that. There's a handful that can really go, but I knew that my ticket would be singing and songs,
Yeah.
And once some decent songs started to show up, then everything kind of did what it did.
What did you do with to hone your voice? I mean, were there guys that you worked with that really kind of gave you a hard time or really pushed you as far as your singing, or like producers that you worked with?
Yeah, early on, it was, I think it's interesting. I think most people assume that you were at your best when you had the most success. And I don't believe that. I think I'm a better singer now than I was when I had all my hits. And my ears tell me that. And that's all I've ever listened to anyway.
Yeah.
Is what my ears told me to do and not to do. And I got some great advice when I was just first starting to make my first records 40-some years ago. And it was Sweet Emery Gordy who, I was singing something. It was a real traditional country song. And he got on the talk back. He goes, "Hey, I don't mean this rudely, but we already have a George Jones, and you're not him."
Yeah.
And it was great advice. It stung.
Yeah.
But I get it. Okay. He said, just find a way to sing like you.
Yeah. You've done a lot of session singing. You've done so much so much stuff that people aren't even aware of.
Yeah.
And part of it is that, and what this hits on what you said before, to be a good harmony singer, you have to be a bit of a mimic.
Well,
because
sure.
you have to be able to blend with the other vocalist. So I guess that kind of plays into, you were kind of like, okay, this is a kind of a George Jones song. I'm going to sing like George Jones.
Yeah. I mean, it's to me, it's a harder job being a sideman or being a session singer, session player, because you have to do what you do that fits what you're doing. You can't just go freewheel it all the time,
Right.
And so I always felt like when I was young, that's what I dreamt of being, not a star.
Yeah.
I said, I want to be the guy that's on the back of the record covers that plays and sings on people's records. And that's what I really aspired to do. And even though I had a great run of success, I love the process of being a contributor.
Yeah.
I use this word all the time, at nauseum sometimes, but it's a very democratic process.
Yeah.
The way you make a record and the way you gather with people and serve a song is what you're kind of supposed to do, not care about who gets all the attention or who gets to be the loudest or whatever, show off. And if if you just do what's necessary, you don't get noticed. It'll help what you're doing. It'll make it better. And so that's all I've continued to do, because I love the process. I still do it all the time here, and I know that there's a bunch of records out there that people wouldn't have any idea that it's me.
Yeah, I think it was like a Aaron Tippin record or something. There was something that you would sing, and it was like I had to really listen hard, and it was realizing that you were just blending in with his vocal sound.
And those were hard sessions, because his voice was very nasally and kind of piercing, and mine isn't, and so I had to affect my voice in a way that would work with his, and that's, the phrasing, all that kind of stuff, it's really hard to do, and it's a challenge, and I love the challenge, and I love, I remember when I first started singing on Conway Twitty's records, his wife Dee pulled me aside. She said, "Now look, he's real particular about his harmony singing." I said, "I'll bet you $1 that he thinks I'm his brother when we're done." Because I'll have it seamless. I'll have it tight. I'll have it, just the way it's supposed to be. That's what I always wanted to be. Phil Everly, or I always wanted to be Don Rich when I was a kid. That's what I loved. And if you can take what you do and enhance somebody else and make it blend, and there's a thing that happens when singers sing together when it's just right. It has I'm not sure the right word, a buzz. There's a buzz that happens. It's like a guitar. If one string's a little sharp and one string's a little flat, they beat against each other. And when great harmony singing is really, really good, man, it's seamless, and it doesn't waver.
I get one of the points I want to make. People have this tendency to think that people are just born with this talent, and then they just take it forward. But you put in a lot of hard work into doing this, into being able to blend. We're just talking about your vocals now, but just that really listening and really working hard at it.
Yeah, and it's what the listener doesn't get to hear is how many times you screw it up.
Yeah.
Before you get it right, whether it's a solo, whether it's a vocal, whether it's whatever you do. Me and Rodney Crowell were having a conversation with Fred Foster one time, and we were telling Fred, said, "Man, you guys were way better. The way you did it. It was all live. That was Roy Orbison records were live, and you just did it. And we're overdubbing and fixing and splicing." And Fred laughed. He said, "Well, you might think that, but the next time you listen to, he named one of Roy's great hits. He said, you have to understand, Roy's voice didn't open up until the 47th take." He said between take 47 and take 53, we took those passes and cut the record together out of those passes where his voice was the very best that it was on the session. And it's the same process, just a little bit backwards now. What they're able to do with technology after the fact is astounding.
Yeah.
If you use technology for the right reason, you're not taking the soul out of something. People say all the time, they kind of bitch about auto-tune and this and that, and I go, the singer's either interesting or they're not. And all that's doing is making them more in tune.
Yeah.
It's not making them more interesting.
Yeah. It doesn't give their voice more character.
So it's either there or it isn't. That's the deal for me with singers that, you sing the phone book and all that, but there's something about their voice that doesn't speak to me. And a lesser singer that can't sing the phone book, but there's something about their voice that's compelling to me. I'd rather hear that, still that way.
Did your parents support you when, because your dad was a lawyer and a judge, and so were they dismissive at all of you wanting to do music for a living? Not
one day, not one conversation. Yeah. My father was a frustrated banjo player.
Yeah.
Not very good. I thought he was Earl Scruggs, but turns out he wasn't very good at all. But Mom played the harmonica a little bit, so they all loved music. There was always records played at my house, and I heard my mom. I tell this story ad nauseum too. Most of my stories everybody's heard, but that's all you got. The stories you got.
Yeah.
And my mom was getting interviewed after I'd had a nice run of success, and she said, "Did it bother you that your son didn't take a more traditional route with his life and go get an education and a real job?" And da 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 da. And she smiled and said, "No, I didn't really care much about having a rich kid."
Yeah.
She said, but I sure wanted to have a happy kid.
Yeah.
And that music made him happy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I roll as
Yeah.
a dad. I want my kids to be joyful. I want them to love their life. And, some people look at a musician's life and think it's bad and it's hard and it's all, all that stuff. I go, what's wrong with my life? Why would you want your kids to do what you did? I go, what I did was a blast.
Yeah.
And very few people get to do something they love for their living, and I was lucky. I got to. Still doing it.
Were you a good student?
Terrible. No, it's just awful. I'll tell you, good. I had algebra in 9th grade, and math didn't make any sense to me. I could barely balance a checkbook. And so I take algebra in 9th grade, and I flunk every paper, every daily paper, every test. Like, I don't just kind of flunk it. I'm getting 16s, 19s. I don't get 48s and 51s or anything. I was 12s and 11s. And I get my report card at the end of the year, and it said D-, which meant I passed.
Yeah.
And I went to the teacher, and I go, what'd you give me a D- for? I didn't even come close. He goes, yeah, no kidding. He goes, I don't care. You tried. He said, this will never make sense to you. He said, I don't want you to ever have to see this again. That's why I passed you.
Wow.
He said, you just keep playing your guitar and don't worry about algebra.
I mean, yeah, he had a much bigger view.
He had a good,
rather than just
perspective. Yeah. It was pretty cool.
How did you were a bluegrasser, and what made you switch into playing electric music? What inspired you to get into electric music?
Well, I had played electric prior to the bluegrass
you had that
stretch.
335
I had
that
that
you
red 335 that my mom and dad got me when I was 10. And I was playing all the rock and roll songs of the day and playing Rocky Mountain Way in my bedroom and all the little garage bands and everything. We had the handful of songs we knew, and I was turning it up loud and all that stuff. And then I got turned on by bluegrass by a friend of mine named Bobby Clark, who's a really fine mandolin player from Oklahoma City, and we grew up 2 blocks apart, and I never knew he was a musician. And I went over to his dad's house one day. I'd broken a string on my dad's banjo and didn't know how to fix it. I knew if I'd catch hell if I didn't fix it, So Bobby's dad, Charlie, fixed it for me and said, you play music, don't you? And I said, yeah, a couple of garage bands, and we play dances at school. You ever played any bluegrass? I said, no, not a note. And he put an acoustic guitar in my hand, and he said, my son Bobby's a really good musician, and we started, I started playing and said, hey, we just lost our lead singer. Would you want to join our band? And I said, man, I don't know anything about this music, but it came pretty easily. And I just loved it. I loved the process. I think great bluegrass rocks as hard as the Rolling Stones.
Well, and also
you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, and also that was an era when bluegrass was really doing interesting things. You had Sam Bush with Newgrass Revival, and you had J.D. Crowe, and you had the New South, and you had all these bands that were really bringing a new energy to bluegrass.
Seldom Seen, Country Gentlemen, and I was playing all these bluegrass festivals the last couple of years of high school, and I met all those people. I met Ricky, I met Marty Stewart, I met Mark O'Connor when he was 12, and it was crazy that music bonded me to so many people that I still have great relationships with to this day. And I don't think I would be the harmony singer I am. I don't think I'd be the musician I am or the songwriter I am without a little dose of bluegrass in those early years.
Yeah. So what was it that got you into electric music again after the bluegrass phase?
It was just a fluke thing. I'd moved out to California when I was 19, and I still loved to play electrically and was a Steely Dan fan, all those kinds of records that I loved. And moving to California, it was all out there. I remember I went to see Larry Carlton play when I first moved there, and I had my 335, and I went to Santa Monica Civic and heard him play, and just life-changing, the way he bent those strings and how soulful he played. And I took my guitar to a shop and I said, I need one of those stop-tail pieces.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was like, as soon as I heard you say that, I was like, is that when you put the stop-tail on there?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And so I'd go into the clubs and, hey, you want to sit in? I said, yeah. And then they'd go, let's play something country or something bluegrass. And you go, I want to I want to bend strings and play some of this other stuff, some of this fusion-y, jazzy kind of things. And then a friend of mine called me one day and said, hey, I'm going to go audition for Pure Prairie League. You want to go? I said, yeah, I'll go with you. I said, I opened for them when I was in high school.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to see them again. And so we went to this thing and introduced myself. They said, aren't you the kid from Oklahoma that plays all the different instruments? And I said, yeah. They said, would you be interested in this gig? We need a lead singer and guitar player. And I said, no. I'm playing with this guy named Byron Berline, a great fiddle player.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm not really looking for... They said, well, come back and jam with us tomorrow. I said, okay. So I got to take my little red 335 and an amp down there and fired it all the way up, dimed it, and having a blast. I said, this is kind of fun. And I said, hey, I'll come out. I'll go out with you for a while. See, made a few records and had a couple of hits. And it was a great experience. You know, I got to see the music business for real.
Yeah.
I got to see the touring business for real and buses. And it was a great learning experience for me. And that's kind of when I got the bug to maybe think about being my own artist and doing my songs, things like that.
With Pure Prairie League, were you a sideman or did you have like an ownership stake?
There wasn't much to own.
Yeah.
They're just out there playing college gigs, and they didn't sell a lot of records. There was no big upside to being a partner or anything, And,
Yeah.
And they, I had just started writing songs when I joined them in '78, and they said, "Do you write songs?" And I said, "Yeah, I got a few," And I had written 7 songs total, and they cut 5 of them, and they were all awful. They were horrible songs. I listen back to them now and go, "Oh my God!"
But you had to write those.
You can't even pass algebra, and you think you're writing songs now. But anyway, that got me started writing songs, and little by little, they got better and better and better, and whatever. But those were fun days. I never cared what role I played in music. I didn't have to be the front guy. I didn't have to be talking in between songs. I didn't have to be the lead guitar player. I didn't have to. None of it mattered. I just liked being a part of the process. And when I started playing with the Eagles, and that's my favorite comment Don made about me, was they asked him, they said, "Why'd you get the country guy to be in your band?" He goes, "He knows how to be in a band."
Yeah.
And that was a great compliment.
Because you do know. You
know your spot.
Yeah, you know how to be a harmony singer. You know how to be a sideman guitar player. Yeah. You know how to do that gig.
We were playing, you'll love this story, and Don's playing percussion. We're playing Rocky Mountain Way. And I'm over there going, it's like I'm in my bedroom, and I'm playing with Joe, and we're playing Rocky Mountain Way, and I'm just throttling these power chords for Joe, just ripping them, and Don's looking at me all puzzled and whatnot, and I looked at him, I go, "What?" And he said, "I thought you were a bluegrasser." I said, "I am."
Yeah.
I said, "But I kind of like this too."
But this isn't too bad. How did you meet like Albert Lee and James Burton and all the hot band guys?
When I moved out to California, I was 19, and I moved out there to play with Byron, and Byron played on all those Emmy records.
Right.
Knew all those folks, and I started getting seen by a lot of those people. The first gig I did when I played with Byron was at the Troubadour in Los Angeles, and we were opening for Guy Clark.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm up there, and we did "Till I Gain Control Again" in our show, and it was one of the songs that Byron's band had recorded, and I was singing it, and I'm in there playing, and Guy's in there, and all of the everybody, Emmy and Rodney and all these people were there to see Guy, and I got done with our set, and Rodney came to my dressing room, and he goes, "Who are you? What's your? We're going to be friends." And he said, "Because you already sing my song better than me." I go, "Well, I don't know about that," but that's how we met and became friends, and he invited me when he left Emmy and started his original band. He asked me to come play with him, and I wanted to, because it was such a high level of musicianship that would have been great. But Pure Prairie League had just changed to another record company and was getting a fresh shot at something. And I said, I think I want to give this one more shot before I bail on it. And wound up having a hit with "Let Me Love You Tonight" and a couple other songs. And then another year passed, and we were going to have our first kid, Janice and I. She was born in May of '82. And I decided to get off the road because those guys toured 250 days a year, shows.
Wow.
Killed it, and I said, I can't be gone that much with a new kid coming. And so I quit, and I called Rodney. I said, hey, if you're up for it, I'm around if you need somebody. And then we started doing that and played with him and Roseanne, and a great stretch of life, with a killer band. And I'll never forget the first rehearsal. And once again, it was always my singing that kind of led the way for me. And Roseanne reluctantly hired me.
Mm-hmm.
And Rodney said, no, he can do it, And so I'm replacing Albert in the band. And Albert and I played a bunch together when I was with Byron, the clubs and all that. And it was one of my dearest friends. And I didn't really get to know James until later. But all that to say is when we were doing the first rehearsal, Larry London's playing drums, and Emery's playing bass, so it's heavyweight everywhere you look. And we played the intro to the first song, a song called Rainin', and I have the intro. And I started playing the intro, and they kicked in, and I said, oh, my God, I got to play the best I've ever played right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like just so intimidating. And I got through that song, and then she called My Baby Thinks He's a Train, which is all the chicken picking Albert stuff. And we finished the second one, and I killed the first one and killed the second one. And she came over to me, and she goes, I think I owe you an apology. And I said, for what? She goes, I didn't think you could do this like that. She said, in fact, the first song, I thought you got lucky. And so it was a great chair, to sit in and be, it's very fan friendly. You get to play a lot of the solos, and it's a pretty big, cool gig. And I remember once we played, and Michael Nesmith was gonna do a video, I think, for Rose, and he was at the show, and he came back and he goes, man, you just killed me the way you play, blah blah blah. He was very complimentary. I said, well, thanks. I said, full confession, I said I was maybe one of the biggest Monkey fans that ever lived.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I watched the TV show every weekend. I said, I even joined the fan club and wrote you a letter, said I wanted to be in the band. He goes, well, after hearing you play, I wish we'd have hired you. So I could have been a Monkey.
Could have been a Monkey.
A little bit of luck.
From listening to your playing, it's at least obvious to me that Albert Lee's an influence on you.
Oh, God, the biggest.
Yeah. So when did you first hear him and meet him?
When I first heard him, I think might have been Luxury Liner.
Yeah.
One of Emmy's records in '76, '7, whenever that came out. And the reason I was so drawn to it, I'd heard James play on Haggard records and different things. But with my bluegrass playing, flat picking, open strings, all those kinds of things, it all felt like it was related.
Right.
And I said, this makes sense to me. And I understand. Like, I can hear jazz, I understand how it feels, but I don't understand the theory of it too well. But this really spoke to me, and I went out and I bought a Telecaster.
Well, that's what I was, because it was like, because that guitar, that's your first Telecaster, right?
Yeah.
And your first Telecaster is a Blackguard. So I was thinking there had to have been an Albert or someone influence you to where it's like, because he was playing a Blackguard.
Yeah, of course.
And you decided you had to have a Blackguard like Albert.
I mean that sound was so infectious, and not different from James's. Just a telly's a telly, and they have the distinct sound, and it just kind of had everything I wanted to try to learn to do. And my favorite story about my telly playing is Hank DeVito, the great steel player, played with Emmy and Rodney and all of us forever and ever. He picked up my white telly one time and said, can I play your guitar? And I said, yeah, man. So he picks it up and he starts yanking on it, taking the neck and looking for this. He goes, where's the pull string?
Yeah.
I said, doesn't it have one? He goes, yeah, it does. I hear it every night. And I didn't know there was such a thing.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I figured out, bending is critical to me. How long you take, how the pitch of it, the intonation of it all. And I learned to do it without a pull string, and it sounds kind of close,
It's very close, and that's one of the things that's unique about your playing is that you heard Clarence and the other pull string guys, and when you bend, a lot of times you bend in the same way that the pull string kind of sounds, and so that's why people would think that you had a B-bender.
Because I'm only doing it because of how I heard it.
Right.
I never got to see it per se, and I didn't know they had a contraption on their instrument that did it like a steel guitar, and I loved the steel guitar so much. In 1975, I got the band I was in called the Bluegrass Alliance came to Nashville and made a record, and Buddy Emmons played on it. And that lit a fire in me like no fire has ever been lit. And I went and bought a steel guitar, and I've always loved the instrument, and it reminds me a lot of a voice, of a human voice, of what it can do. And so I was a frustrated steel player for a little bit, and we had called it a mercy selling when I finally got rid of it. But yeah, I was always trying to emulate what the pedal did, and my fingers would do it in the same cadence and the same kind of rhythm of it. You can hear guys bend strings, and some of them bend too fast, some of them bend too slow, some of them bend past the pitch, and for me, every bend had to be soulful. It had to be just the right grease. All that stuff is the nuance of all this stuff is what's interesting to me.
Yeah.
And not how much you can play, but how moving you can play with as sometimes as little as possible. There's times to blaze, and it's warranted, and it's what you're supposed to do. But there's other times that you're not. Yeah. I tell this story all the time. I got some producer that said to me after I played something, he goes, "That was great. That was impressive." He goes, "Play me half of what you know."
Play me half of what you know.
And once again, that's kind of how I go through everything. I try to say the most with the least.
Yeah. There's did you ever sit down with Albert and try to get him to show you anything?
Not really.
Yeah.
There was probably a time where I might have felt like he didn't like me because I played a good bit like him. Mm-hmm. And I hope he took it as flattery, because that's all it was.
Right.
And it was just so good. Why wouldn't you want to learn that?
Yeah.
And I play like him a little bit, but I don't really play like him.
No, you don't.
There's a bounce and a dance and a thing that Albert plays with that's better than anybody I've ever heard.
His playing swings.
It just dances like Sammy Davis Jr. It's bouncy, it's fun, and we went to Australia together. I don't remember when, in the 80s, and I went over, and just him and we picked up a band over there and took 2 Telecasters and played 2 acoustics, and we just had the best time. I was never I wouldn't say I was intimidated, but I wasn't afraid to play, because I've never, too many people, they just look at guitar playing like it's a shootout and it's a contest, and it couldn't be more wrong. I don't think the guitar players really feel that way. Some do. You can tell who's trying to bury you.
Right.
And
who's friendly.
We all get our day in the sun, and we all get used up and then cast aside. I don't care if you're a record producer, you're a songwriter, you're a musician, you're an artist. It just, I always tell young artists, I said, man, have a good time. I said, they quit playing Elvis, and they're going to quit playing you.
That's right. Absolutely.
And you just got to know it's coming.
It's coming.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's the way it's supposed to be.
Your kind of Telecaster rig, it seems like you had that 53 Tele, and you had a twin with JBLs, and that was kind of...
2 twins.
2 twins with JBLs. Because that was kind of the rig, was you were supposed to have a twin with JBL speakers.
Yeah. But it was interesting, because I would, as bright as that could be, I would always roll the tone pot about halfway back on the Telecaster, and then your amp could be brighter. so it wasn't as sizzly as the top end of that tone pickup.
And you've talked about learning that trick from Roy Nichols. So did you ask him that?
I might have just heard it.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Okay.
You know.
So did you ever meet Roy?
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's hard to remember things.
Yeah.
It really is. I'm 67, and I'll think of somebody, and I go, "What's their name? What's their name?" And it's getting worse and worse. It's bizarre.
I get it.
But maybe maybe I just heard him say it or watched him say it, or
because I learned it from you in Guitar Player magazine, like in the '90s.
Really?
Because it was like I always thought, well, you just keep the knobs turned all the way up on the guitar, and But I had never thought about using the tone control on a telly, and it was like that's such a great. It's not a trick, but I mean, just a.
Well,
I think it's like it really you just turn it down a little bit, and it just really tames. It still sounds twangy and good.
I think a Telecaster is way too bright.
Yeah.
Most of the time, but that's what's so cool about my white guitar is it doesn't have. It's not that crispy, bite your head off kind of tone.
When did you start using a compressor pedal as part of your rig?
Oh, the whole time.
Yeah.
And I use it more. I use it more for a gain than I do to squeeze the sound.
Okay.
And I don't the sustain of a compression I don't turn up very much.
Yeah.
But I use whatever my volume is all the way up, and I use the compressor and use the gain. What it does, it evens the sound out for me in my ears, and that along with rolling the tone back a little bit and whatnot, it kind of warms it, and I use it as a little bit as a boost.
Yeah.
To some degree, but I'm not I don't know much about pedals.
Yeah.
I just dial them until they sound good to me. Is about all I know how to do.
How did you learn about the compressor pedals? I mean, who did you see or did you just?
Man, the first. You remember? I think it was it Ibanez that had a multi-effects unit, and it had a compressor, it had a delay, it might have had a distortion and something else. I don't remember what, but you could just step on each one.
It had knobs on it.
Yeah,
it had it was like.
I think I still have it somewhere, but I just liked, I'm not crazy about compression on a humbucker.
Yeah.
But I sure like it for just a little bit. I can't remember the name now of the pedal that Buzzy Featon turned me on to. And it's a green compressor pedal. Like, dang, I wish I could remember the name of it. But it really does a beautiful thing because it takes the sound and it blooms.
Is that the little green one?
I don't know.
Is it what you're using now?
Yeah. You could tell me what it's called. And
it's like a Gaiatron or something like that. It's some strange
it's a
name.
Funny,
it's a little green.
You don't find, Yeah.
But you used a Boss compressor for a long time.
But I always found that one sucked the sound up a little bit too much for me.
Yeah.
And this one doesn't. It doesn't squeeze it as hard.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Yes, absolutely.
Sounds a little randy.
Sound a little randy? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Oh, golly.
Now here come the comments.
So the 80s is kind of an interesting era for you because it's like you had a solo career, you're on RCA. A quick aside, recently Mary Martin passed away.
Yeah.
And did she manage you at one point?
Yeah, when I first signed with RCA.
Yeah. So Rodney posted something on social media where he mentioned that both you and he were managed by Mary. And he said the term, and I'm hoping you can explain this, he said that both of y'all were unmanageable. Of course, those are Rodney's words, but do you have any idea what he meant by you being unmanageable?
I think we're both a couple of knuckleheads, but we're so, I don't know, we're tight. Me and Rodney, we're as
you're like
tight
brothers.
as we, and I don't know, I don't, the guy I work with now, Larry Fitzgerald, he's who I found after Mary decided she couldn't, I couldn't make Mary enough money to survive.
Yeah.
That's why she took a job at RCA in the A&R department there, and she had to. And so I found Larry, and we've been 40 years on a handshake, and he says the same thing. He said, "You kind of manage me more than I manage you." I don't know if that might mean the same thing, but I don't need a lot of coddling, and I don't need, it's just pretty.
And
take care of myself.
But managers are pretty darn important, though.
They are. They're critical.
How connected they are, and the things they can make happen for you.
Yeah, and it's you need nobody can do this on their own. You need a tribe to cheer you on, help you out, and connect the dots and keep the wolves away. And I've been so lucky. Same business manager just passed away last year, Chuck Flood, Larry for 40 years. Same lawyer, John Frankenheimer and his firm, Loeb and Loeb. I've had the same folks my whole career. Never changed anything. I'm so lucky.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
On Rodney, you played the solo on Stars on the Water. That's a great solo.
Oh, thanks.
And also the fact that it's Hank and Albert, playing that opening run, the kind of boogie line.
Yeah.
And how did you end up getting to play the solo when
Good
you got
question.
Albert?
I don't know.
No offense.
None taken.
But
I
it's a
thought
great
the same thing.
Yeah.
What are you, nuts? It was that chair. It took a while, and even when you had Albert, you had Richard Bennett, you had Stuart Smith, you had all these just world class, really great recording kind of guitar players.
Yeah.
New parts and knew really how to make your part count and mean something. That's a great tribute to Richard Bennett, who played on a lot of those records back then too. He didn't want to play solos. Mm-hmm. When I started playing with Rodney's band, Richard was in the band. He goes, "You play all the solos. I like to play rhythm."
Yeah.
Said, okay. And once again, it was a while before I think Rodney trusted me to play some solo stuff. But even then, it's been minimal, over the years, and that's okay, So.
And there was also Foster and Lloyd had you play on a cut of theirs.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want from me this time? That was a fun, snaky Telecaster solo on there. And then you finally get your MCA record deal, and you get with Tony Brown. Yeah. And he starts and the machine starts working in your favor.
Right, but I also I don't know if I was wise enough, but if that's the right term, but I knew that I didn't need to go show the world that I could play the guitar.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you discover that. We talked earlier about two twins in my Telecaster, and I showed up at a TV show in 1983 called New Country, where you went and played your record and the songs on your record, and stage manager came, looked me up and down, he looked at my telly, he goes, "Is that a prop?"
Yeah.
I said, "Well, you'll find out."
and this is going down the rabbit hole, but you had this funny sticker on your telly at that point. It was like behind what was the sticker?
It was a backstage pass from playing with Rose. I love what it said. It said, "I can go anywhere I want." That's what it said on the backstage pass.
And that's why you put it on there on your guitar?
Yeah, exactly.
You just had it on there for a while, then
I took it off. It fell off. I don't remember why.
Yeah.
But
and also, you had Rusty Young playing in your band for a while there.
In the late 80s.
Yeah.
And he was fun because he didn't, I wouldn't say he didn't treat the instrument with the reverence Nashville pedal steel players do. That's the wrong way to say it, but he was more adventurous. He was willing to hit a stomp box and turn it over and be Robert Randolph before Robert was born.
Right, doing the fuzz steel.
And just taking the instrument places that traditionally it never would go.
Yeah.
That's why somebody like Paul Franklin, Tommy White, these guys, they're brilliant, and they can do so much more than just what everybody expected the steel guitar to do. There was times in country music's history where the instrument fell out of favor. In fact, when I recorded "When I Call Your Name," Paul played on that. A lot of people thought it might have been John Huey, but it was Paul Franklin. And we'd cut the track, cut the song, and Paul played the back half of that solo. And it was slightly pedestrian, because in 1989 nobody was using the steel guitar like that,
Right.
And I called him. I said, "Hey man, would you mind coming back and replaying the solo on this waltz we did?" And he said, "Well, I like what I played." And he was kind of pissed. And I said, "Well, I do too, but I said I really wanted to see if I can get you to play the instrument like how we used to, where it cries and it whines and all the stuff nobody really wants anymore, And he was okay, and he begrudgingly came down, and then it became a big hit and a kind of one of those steel solos that's thought of like Together Again and, Lost in the Feeling and some of those kinds of iconic steel solos. And he pulled me aside and he said, "I need to say thank you for getting me to replay that solo." And just all that to say is, you just never know when it's going to flip and turn. And I didn't have any reason to believe that a 4.5-minute waltz would change my life.
Yeah.
But it did. And I just didn't have to make those records and shove my guitar down everybody's throat, because that wasn't how it worked.
You've always had other guitar players on your records playing, with you and supporting you, yet you've always played the solos. Let's talk about Stuart Smith. So whose idea was it to have Stuart play on your records? Was it yours or Tony's?
Probably both of us. We'd
Yeah.
always get together and cast a band who we thought would be right for the songs that we had and the kind of record. My records have always been a bit chameleon-ish in that they'd have something really traditional on them, but also something contemporary and something that rocks, something that might sit in the soulful world. And so you had to cast players that could go different directions, and do many things. And it was just, so how about, hey, we know of Stuart from Rod's Records. Let's see if Stuart will come down and play. It was fun. I had Dean Parks come from California and play on records. And
you've had Richard Bennett.
Fred Tackett.
Fred Tackett. He
way
was
back.
He was on
When I Call Your Name. And,
Yeah.
and I just, I love I've always loved other people's playing way more than mine.
Yeah.
And I'm not a control freak. I don't have to have the attention. I don't have to be the loud. All that stuff is. I just love the camaraderie of it all and seeing what turns up.
When you were cutting those records with Tony Brown, were you only singing when the rhythm tracks were going down, or were you singing and playing?
No, I always played, because I always felt like the feel that I play with would kind of direct everybody where to go.
Yeah.
And feel is everything to me. And, I remember I made a record not long ago, and Steve Jordan was going to play drums. And because of him and Willie Weeks were going to play together as a section, I thought, maybe I'll let them lead where we go, and I won't play. And Steve says, "I came all this way to play with one of my favorite guitar players. You're not going to play? I ain't going to play if you don't play." Diana Krall, I was going to do a jazz duet with her, and she says, "If you don't play, I don't want to play."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, I can't." She goes, that's kind of refreshing that you don't know all those big chords, all those changes in between stuff, whatever. She goes, it'll be just like you, and that's what you learn after time. I don't want to hear anybody but Willie play guitar on Willie records. Oh yeah,
Will and Nelson.
And I heard Chris Stapleton say, he said, "Yeah, there's guys play better than me, but I play right. I play just right for what I do."
That's right.
And it's part of it. It's the way I've equate the way I play is similar to the way that I sing. When I'm getting ready to play something in my head, I go, "How would I sing this?" And that's what points me. And when I'm singing, I go, "How would I play this?"
And that's one of the things that's very identifiable about your guitar playing is that you stop singing with your voice and you sing with the guitar.
Yeah.
It's like you always play solos that are, they might have riffs, but they're melodic. They're not just it's not a barrage of notes being thrown at you. And that's the thing. They're hummable. They're, singable solos.
The melody's in there.
Yeah.
Somewhere. I mean, that's a great old Chet quote. He's doing a session, the guitar player said, "I don't really know what to play." And the melody usually works.
The melody usually works. Yeah.
But it's all true.
Yeah. And so when you were tracking those songs, would you play acoustic or electric to play rhythm? I mean,
Both.
Okay.
Both.
And you would just deal with any kind of bleed through, or,
Yeah,
or you'd
redo,
replace it,
yeah,
or whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, we couldn't have done Liza Jane if I didn't play that groove and get that swampy thing going. And I don't know. It's all fixed. That's the beauty of it. It's all fixable. So just make sure you cut out on the bleed and this and that, and make it work.
Did you talk about Stewart's kind of contributions to your records?
God, it's been so many years ago, but
yeah.
Just beautifully iconic parts. Like I Still Believe in You. I always think that's brilliant guitar playing with what John played on the keyboards, and so identifiable. And once again, you're not looking for something to blow your skirt up. You're looking for something to serve the song, and that's what great musicians do. They listen to each other.
Yeah.
What you play affects what I play, and what I play affects what you play, and kind of. It's a nice dance when it goes the right way.
One of the few albums where you did more of you mimicked a little bit was the Bakersfield album. In it, and not really on the Merle cuts, but more so on the Buck cuts. You kind of moved your voice more in the Buck Owens direction.
I did, and purposely, and it was. It was such a fun record to make with Paul, because adored both of those artists and the music so much. It probably shaped me as much as any. Yeah. And we picked songs that, so often those records never really got to let the musicians shine.
Yeah.
They'd get to play a turnaround, an intro, and that was about it. 2.5-minute song. You didn't have time to hear the guy go whittle away and play a solo with reverse and then a chorus and whatever. And so we picked things that were more suited towards the musicianship than me being the singer. I sang the songs, but we chose songs to where really his steel playing and my telly playing would be kind of the focal point. I think I played Strat on one song on that Holding Things Together record.
Ooh,
and bent some strings in a different way and all that, but
Holding Things Together, I mean, that's a song.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you couldn't go wrong with any of them you picked.
Yeah.
But, there was a few of those that I've been singing my whole life.
Yeah.
That was, you sit in with a bar band and go, hey, let's play Holding Things Together, or Together Again, or some of those things were the ones that, I Can't Be Myself. Pretty obscure Merle track that was written by Steve Young, I think. Yeah. And I always sang it wherever I went in a club. It was easy and everybody could follow along. And it was great fun.
Your guitar playing on that album is really interesting because you kind of you tip your hat to Burton and Don Rich and stuff, but on a lot of the cuts you're playing with your fingers instead of a pick, and you kind of did kind of a bit of a departure.
Yeah, I think I just, like I said, I play what's in my heart, and I hate records that are note for note rapes of other records. That's boring to me.
The parts were great. I loved it. I loved the spin that you took on it, because it was like, how do you do those? And because Burton and Roy Nichols and all those guys have done such identifiable things.
Exactly.
And when you put a little twist to it, it makes it interesting, instead of just like, well, he just mimicked what James did.
Yeah, I never liked note for note representations of old records that didn't seem very creative.
Yeah.
And then you run into the people that are going to say, well, I like the old one better. Well, I'm not trying to say I'm better than either of those guys or any of those guitar players. I just play like I play. And we did it. We do this because we love that music, not because we think we can do better versions.
Yeah.
But people like to listen to things and then, well, it's not as good as blah, blah, blah. I like that better than the original. And you get that sometimes. But the whole point of emulating something you love is the fact that you love it.
Yeah. Did you want to be one of the guitar players in the Hot Band?
Sure.
Yeah.
I was on standby for a long time for Frank, because Frank Reckard would occasionally threaten to quit.
Yeah.
And Emmy would call and say, "Hey, Frank's threatening to quit again. Are you free?" I go, "Yeah." And he never quit.
He never quit.
He never went where it worked. You know?
Yeah.
And so I never got to. I played with Emmy in the '80s with
The Angel Band.
Angel Band thing
Yeah.
with Carl Jackson and Emery, and that was fun. But never got to play all those songs.
Yeah. With the Eagles, how long have you been? 10 years with them?
8. This is my 8th year. Yeah.
Okay. One of the interesting things about is that again you're back to being a sideman, and you're mainly there for your singing. I mean,
Exactly.
you're playing rhythm guitar. You really don't play
Couple
much in the way of
solos a night.
solos. Yeah.
And it's had an impact on my guitar playing.
Yeah.
I'm not as fluid as I probably usually was, and I found that out 2 years ago. I went out and did about 35 shows in the summer where we weren't working, and I had the hardest time keeping up. You know, and it was really a mind bender for me. It was funny. I had refretted my white tally. Went to Joe and said, "Hey, I want to try to wean myself off these big frets." So we put a smaller fret in.
Okay.
And I went out and started playing, and I'm going, I'm sucking bad, this is horrible. And I went back, I said, "Is it because of the smaller frets or just because I suck?" And it was just because I sucked. So I went back to Joe and I said, "Will you please put the big frets back in? I'm having a mind meltdown,
Why did you feel necessary to go to little frets?
I don't know.
Yeah. Just
I have no idea. Just experiment.
Yeah.
Maybe make it a little easier, but it made it a whole lot harder.
Yeah, the bigger frets are easier to play on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he put the big ones back in, and I was still struggling a little bit. I go, "Okay, it's just me.
Yeah. You just gotta keep playing.
I gotta practice." This is my best. Got to be close to my best friend.
The old, I guess the old joke: if the house is on fire, is this the one?
This would be one I'd grab first.
And what would be the second one?
I've got a Martin that I bought when I was 18.
Oh, the one with your kind of college money, your savings.
I saved all the money. I spent everything I had to get it and was broke.
Yeah.
But there's a few. I mean, I don't know. There's a bunch of sentiment. One of those Martins over there was Chet's. It's pretty sentimental. His wife gave to me after he passed. And it's funny, people will make a snide comment about, "Well, why'd you need so many?" And if you knew some of the stories behind some of these guitars, you wouldn't. I don't know that you'd say that, but
Yeah. Because these and every guitar is different. I mean, even though
I know
you have a bunch of blackguards,
none of them hang with this one.
Right.
This is my favorite for me.
Yeah.
Just for me. But
They're all different, and and that's the thing that when you go down the rabbit hole, it's just crazy, because it's like the more you get into it, the more you find out that they sound and feel and react differently.
exactly. Yeah.
So this guitar, it has a second string tree. When did you add that, or
Of
was
course,
it? Yeah.
Joe would get mad if I said he did it.
Yeah.
But I think I don't know if Joe did this or not, but I've always had that second string tree.
Yeah.
And for the reason being, we argue about this, me and Joe, all the time.
Yeah.
I said, I understand that it only has an impact when I play open strings,
Yeah.
but I play a lot of open strings,
Yeah.
all the time. So with that little bit of tension on the nut, it's not as flappy,
Right.
and all that, because there's no angle
Right.
on it. And
You get better downward pressure on the G and D string. That's,
and then after you fret it doesn't matter anymore. I get
Right.
that, but for those open strings for
Yeah.
playing,
Yeah.
those kinds of things,
Yeah.
that'll hang with you a little better.
Yeah. Have you ever done any modifications that you regret on guitars? Like something really heinous?
Not too bad. I've been pretty good with them. Some people have done some things that I wish they hadn't have.
Yeah.
But this one I've never done anything to except replace that pickup and half a dozen fret jobs probably over the years.
Have the pickups ever been rewound?
No.
Like the bridge pickup?
No.
No. Really? That's amazing.
That's death sentence. It's all over. We have to do that. I quit.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, but I guess they'll eventually kind of wear out and do what they do.
Well, the biggest thing you watch out for is when it starts getting a bunch of rust on the low E string, on that pole, that's when you know that there's rust going down in there.
Gotcha.
That's what I've learned from rewinders and stuff like
Gotcha.
that. That's when they start really, you got to watch out for that.
Now, but this one I got for 1978. I still have the receipt, and I can remember the days. Two guys, Bob Woods and another guy named Larry Briggs. Larry's a vintage instrument dealer,
Yep.
and Bob had an old cool music store in Del City, Oklahoma, where I'm from. I'm not from Del City, but close. Anyway, they traded about 20 guitars for 20 guitars, and I wanted a Telecaster.
Yep.
And this one went by in the trade, and Bob Woods had picked it up, the guy that had the store. I said, "Hey, Bob, will you sell that Telecaster?" He goes, "Yeah, sure." I said, "How much?" He goes, $450. I said, "I'll do that." And
Yeah.
it might have been worth another $200 then.
Yeah.
250 might have been
and
worth
then-
a little bit more. And so I paid him for it. And every time I saw him from then on until he died, he would look at me and goes, "God dang, you got to me on that Telecaster." I said, "Bob," I said, "that guitar saved my butt.
Yes.
It made me famous."
And he's made thousands of deals where he made good money on it.
Yeah.
It's just fun to complain sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for some reason, all the finish is gone. And it was that way when I got it.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've worn a good bit of wood off of it over the years, but I can't find any sand marks on there or anything that looks like somebody took it off or it got reshaped or anything. I just think it just has the best neck profile of any Tele I've ever had.
The color, always is really interesting on this. And Nacho, the guy that wrote the Pinecaster book, I asked him, I said, what do you think about that color? And he said, "I don't know. I mean, they could have done something at the time." He said, or it could have gone back for a refin, a couple of years later.
What I heard was they did a lot of the lap steels
Yeah,
in that color,
that's right.
in the white.
Yeah.
And that every now and then they do a white one. And then I've got this one not too long ago from Norm's out in L.A., who I knew when I lived out there and bought a bunch of guitars from him over the years. But that was Roy Buchanan's backup to Nancy.
Yeah.
And came up for sale. And I said, man, to have a chance to have another white one would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I don't remember ever seeing hardly any white ones.
Yeah. Because most of them are the butterscotch color.
Exactly.
And then, yeah. So this is a really cool guitar because this was Jabo's guitar that he played with little Jimmy Dickens. Mm-hmm. And again, this is another thing I learned from Nacho was that the finish on these broadcasters is really, really brittle.
Yeah.
And you have another one where it's really coming off bad.
Most of it had come off even when I bought it.
Yeah. And this is one of those guitars that they sold it to you, and of course they wanted you to play it on the Opry.
Yeah, the story goes they found out that I played a guitar like that, and they contacted me and said, "We see you play a guitar like our relative Jabo, who played with Jimmy when he first came to the Opry. Would you be interested in his guitar?" And I said, "It's been on the bed for 60 years." And I said, "Well, sure." So they came to the Opry, and I bought it, and they said our dream is to see it played on the Opry one more time.
Yeah.
And Jabo died probably back in 51 or 2.
Oh, yeah. He died in early 50s.
Yeah. And so I went to Jimmy. I said, "Hey, little Jimmy, can I play with you tonight?" And he said, "How come?" And I said, "Well, I just bought Jabo's old guitar." And he said, "I want that guitar." And I said, "Well, I paid this much for it." And he goes, "I don't want it that bad."
I can hear little Jimmy saying that. Yeah.
"I don't want that." So I went out and played it with him, and then family's over there boohooing, a great moment and all that. And I took it home with me. And then fast forward a few years later, and Jimmy passed away. And so I had an idea. I said, I'm going to take Jabo's guitar and play it at Jimmy's funeral, sing "Go Rest High."
Yeah.
Played on that guitar, and I told the story of the instrument, to the people, and I said, this guitar was the guitar that brought Jimmy here, and I think it's only right that it should be the guitar that takes him out of here.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful thing, beautiful moment. Everybody's boohooing, and it's beautiful. And I get home from the funeral, and the phone rings, and it's Haggard, Merle Haggard. It's Vince, it's Merle. I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "What I just watched you do, so that was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. What you did for that man was so beautiful."
Wow.
And he said, "I want that guitar." I said, you can't have it either, Hank. He said, I can't quit crying. He said, I don't cry.
Yeah.
I do not cry, and I can't quit crying. That was beautiful, and it was a neat moment, for full circle moment.
Yeah. And Jabba was an important guitar player
Well,
because he was.
It's him and Spider, right? Played twin guitars. Is that right?
and Grady Martin,
Yeah.
and apparently Jabba was kind of helped Grady out, and they got going, and this is probably the first broadcast or telecaster was played on the Opry.
It would have to have been.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the serial numbers are not sequential, but that's
Yeah.
0048.
Yeah.
So it's got to be
It's got to be early.
early.
Yeah. That's a really, really cool guitar. This is one that you've been identified with a lot.
I played that forever.
You played this in Pure Prairie League. You played it, and you got this from your buddy.
My best friend Benny. Yeah, Benny Garcia was my childhood first music friend, and we played in all of our first bands together and everything. And even when he had it, I bought this guitar. I only had one Fender, and I knew I wanted to maybe get a Strat. And he had that, and it had been refinished back then. And we made a deal that he'd sell it to me for $200 and a pair of rough out boots. So I bought him some boots, gave him $200 and got that Strat, and I played it the whole time. I played it my whole life, and I've put the EMGs in there and changed to one of those bridges. Two Tech was the name of the company that put those bridges in there. Mike Hansen was it made a lot of sense. It made the guitar sustain a little more and do some interesting things. And the fact that it had been refinished, I didn't mind routing out the body a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I put the old pickups back in it and then found my way back to, I like having that sweet, quiet EMG sound sometimes for certain things.
And they have kind of a presence, like a high-end thing that's really, that kind of cuts through without being harsh. It's
gacky,
kind of
yeah. And it was great because those EMGs with this, and I'd play live, whatever amps I was using, I didn't have to readjust tone all the time on the amps. It would take whichever one well. And so, Benny passed away 3 or 4 years ago, and I told him, I said, I'm going to sell you that guitar back someday for $200, a pair of boots. Never got to.
Yeah. I had the pleasure of meeting Benny a number of years ago, out on the road, and what a fabulous guy. And the fact that you had a childhood friend that was with you
my whole career.
Yeah. And
from the late 80s on.
Yeah.
So
I guess that would be kind of helping kind of grounding you, having someone, having a friend that knew you pre-fame, and who was always there to kind of, when you got the big head, they were there to kind of
knock it off. Yeah, he kept me in line. But what was cool was when I called him to see if he'd do it. I said, "Hey man, would you consider coming out and being my guitar tech?" And he goes, "What's a guitar tech?"
Yeah,
he's a good player himself, And I said, "I don't really know, but we'll figure it out. It'd just be fun to have you with me on this run." And he did, and it was awesome. I remember years ago, from recommendation from my manager, I hired a guitar player to be my second guitar player for a tour. And in the first rehearsal, I knew right away it was the wrong thing to do. And I called my manager, Larry. I said, "Hey, man, this isn't going to work out." And he said, "Don't tell me that." He said, "I promised him the gig." I said, "I know, but look, it's just it's not a good fit. And stylistically, great guy, but whatever." And he said, "Okay." So he called the guy and he said, "Hey man, I'm sorry, but the gig with Vince isn't going to work out." And he goes, "Yeah, no kidding." He said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Hell, I couldn't play as good as his guitar tech." He said, "I knew I didn't have a shot."
Well, I guess that kind of made it. He was expecting the hammer to come down.
And Benny's father was a world-class jazz guitar player.
Yes.
Played with Charlie Christian when they were young, and both from Oklahoma. And Benny's dad just didn't want to travel and live that life. He wanted to stay home, play clubs, but he would have been as big a giant as a jazz guitarist as anybody that ever lived.
There are a few clips of him, playing on that you can find.
He played with Wills a little bit, and all those guys. And it was magical to hear him play.
Yeah.
We were too dumb. We were up there, playing our rock and roll.
Tell us one Benny story.
Oh my God. Like there's I can't tell several of them. We lost him in Europe once, and Benny he'd been known to have a good time once in a while, and we were in Amsterdam, I think, and it was time for the gig was over, and we were gonna leave in 2 or 3 hours, bus call, whatever, and there's no Benny, and there's no cell phones back then, and we didn't, what do we do?
Yeah.
Well, we leave him. So we left him and went to the next gig. And somehow in hell, he managed to find his way to the next country and to the gig. And boy, Larry lit into him good. He said, I don't care whose best friend you are. He said, you ever do that again? He said, I'll run you off. But no, he was beautiful. I remember my favorite story of Benny, he'd partake a little bit in occasionally have himself overserved. But when his father passed, he called me up and said, man, my dad just died. And I said, oh, man, I said, can I call you back in just a little bit? I'm in the middle of something. He said, yeah. So I called him back that night, and he was pretty buzzed. And I talked to him for 3 hours. We talked about everything. We talked for about 3 hours. And the next day, he wakes up, he turns over to his wife, and he says, I can't believe that son of a bitch didn't call me back. He told me he's going to call me back. That son of a bitch didn't even call me back. My dad died, and he didn't even call me back. His wife said, Benny, he called you back. You talked to him for 3 hours. I did. Benny was a party. He was the best. It was interesting. He was my first music friend.
Yeah.
When I was 6th grade, I think I had just gotten my red 335 and was sitting out on the porch playing it through my super reverb, and he rode by on his bicycle, and he pulled up in the driveway, and he goes, hey, man. He said, I play guitar too. And I said, you do? He goes, yeah, I live a couple miles away, so we should get together. And we did. Got together and started our first garage band.
Yeah.
Larry on drums, Benny played bass, and I played guitar. We were a bad power trio.
Low voltage.
Yeah, we went through it all.
Yeah. We're going to pull out a Gibson just to be nice.
Gypsum.
A Gibson, yes. Made in China. So you talked about Larry Carlton earlier, and one of the fun things is seeing you at the Christmas shows that you and Amy do are a lot of fun, partially because you get to see kind of a different side of you, and on some of the tunes like you would do This Christmas, and you'd just go off playing the 335, and you're playing in kind of a Larry Carlton kind of stylistic thing, and it's fun hearing you play the 335. So is this your favorite one? It
is. I mean, my red one is obviously my favorite, but this is the best sounding. And I was with Robin Ford when I found this and down at Carter's, and he started playing it. He goes, I think this is the best 335 I've ever played.
Wow.
That's pretty good, pretty healthy endorsement.
That is a guy that helped push.
Those were the two guys that that just knocked everybody out when they played together at the clubs in L.A. And I was a kid and whatever, and just love to hear them play. And
did you hear Robin and Larry play together a lot? Yeah.
Yeah. They play some of the clubs out in L.A. And the guy Mike McGuire that worked at Valley Arts, he's the one that did all their setup work and fret jobs and everything guitar-wise for them, and I started going to him, and I said, make my guitar play like theirs, and put big frets in and all that stuff.
What year is this?
59.
Yeah.
This is really something. It's not too big for a 59. A lot of the 59s are too big for me.
Yeah, they got big necks on them at times. Yeah.
But, they just sustain. They do all the things that Fender wants to do, but can't quite.
Yeah. It's a different beast. And then that's the thing. It's nice, Because when you play the telly, when you play the Strat, when you play the 335, you get different parts of you. You get different parts of your
it makes you play
influences.
different.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm always doing. I'm not trying to play this guitar on everything.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to pick the right guitar for what I'm wanting to do.
Yeah.
And I'll go through several of them, just going, how does this sit in the track? How does this, play well with others? So I don't know. It's such a fun thing to chase it.
Yeah.
Tone, and I've played for 60 years, and I'm still trying to sound better. I'm still trying to find a better stomp box. Still trying to find a better speaker. Still trying to, all this stuff still goes on.
Well, again, going back to gear, you were kind of a Fender Twin guy with JBLs for a long time.
Right.
And then you started using the Rivera amps, and that kind of got you away from the JBLs. And you started using a pedal board, because I thought it was funny, because on earlier performances, you'd see your pedals on top of your amp. Like, you didn't have them in front of you. You'd have your pedal, and you could see you turn around, and you'd hit the pedal on top of the Twin. This is pretty funny.
Half the time, I'd have to kick the Twin to get it to work.
Yeah.
Put a boot on it, to get tubes to reset, whatever.
And then you kind of... Yeah, you've kind of morphed through the years, and you've been using little Walters. You used Fender Deluxes for a while, but then you got on the little Walter thing, and you've been doing that for quite a while.
Yeah, I like those a lot, because it doesn't matter what you throw at them. You can throw a Strat, a Tele, a 335, a Les Paul. Yeah, doesn't matter, and they're so musical. They take everything you throw at them pretty well, and that's what I'm going to do. I don't want 4 different sets of amps out there to play. Yeah. Through during a show, and it just makes it simple, and it works pretty good. Yeah, Phil's a great guy.
What kind of speakers do you like?
Oh gosh, I don't even know anymore.
Yeah,
mostly probably Celestians.
Yeah,
I think. I'm not sure what the numbers are on the back or what color they are.
Yeah.
I'm not that big of a gear guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, but when it sounds right, you leave it alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it's I don't use JBLs anymore.
Yeah.
They ruin my back.
Make an amp horribly
Carry a
heavy.
Twin through a club will kill a man.
Yeah. All right, we got you to get one of your bursts out.
One of your bursts. That sounds so awful.
It's not
It's horrible.
It's okay. You do this for a living.
I don't have a boat, okay?
Do you have a private jet?
No, I don't have a jet. I don't have a home. I don't have another car.
See, it's okay to have a burst.
That's all I want is guitars.
Yes. So, you're good. You're good. So
My other burst is a 59 also. Thurston.
Well, this is a great burst. It's lightweight. It plays great. It sounds great. It's less filling. Yeah.
Yeah. There really is it's not just hoodoo. They're great and they sound great. This is my favorite bridge pickup I've ever heard on any guitar.
Yeah.
I went to Joe and I played this a little bit with the guys, and I said, I finally feel like I've got really legit rock and roll tone.
Well, it's clear and fat. I mean, it's just
unbelievable.
It's it's a good fit for a telly player too, because it's kind of like a big telly. Yeah, in a way.
Sounds good.
Where did this one come from?
From Well Strung Guitars, Dave Davidson.
Okay. Yeah.
He's become a really good pal of mine, and I try to go up there whenever we're in New York, and we wound up spending a good bit of time in New York City, and so I go to see him whenever I can.
And this is a 59?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It had a Bigsby or whatever, a couple of bite marks, but it's a good one.
It really is.
That's what I'm crazy about is that pickup right there.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you to play the solo off "Take Your Memory With You." You can play it on that or on the telly or whatever you want to play it on.
I don't remember what I played it on. I might play it on my red 335.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. That would make sense.
I can't remember.
Was that a composed solo, or was that something that you came off the? Okay, it has been it's been more than 3 years ago. So, yeah.
I don't know. I just kind of take off and keep what I like and fix what I don't.
Yeah.
Just like everybody else, you know. You know, and I think I'm probably emulating a more older style of Nashville guitar playing
Yeah.
than a Telecaster style.
Right, kind
you
of
know?
more of the Grady Martin kind
exactly.
of thing.
Because,
Yeah.
you know, Gibson was king
Yes.
here in Nashville for
Right.
the longest time.
Absolutely.
I think I've seen you do a
Yeah.
thing on when you thought the Telecaster showed up. You know?
Yeah. Well, the Jabo guitar is like kind of the ground zero in that, and then it's like it's not until years later that it really kind of takes off as being popular. It was more of a California thing.
Exactly.
It was, it
They
was
liked that
Buck
twingy
and
stuff,
Merle
and it rocked
and Phil Baugh and all those cats were all playing tellies, and so so this was kind of you think you might have played it on the 335 originally.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah. But it's a great solo. It starts off with that kind of with the arpeggio, and you're outlining the chords really well. It's a really nice.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, it's a really nice solo.
Wish I could play it. I never played it anymore.
Yeah,
Like a steel player.
yeah.
I play it all now. I'm already lost.
Yeah.
Just swingy.
Yeah.
Dances,
Very swingy.
you know.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot more about shuffles in the last 30 years than I knew in 1990.
Yeah.
You know, I loved them, you know, and we played them a lot. Rodney, we loved playing shuffles together. And I loved being Don Rich, and he'd sing, and we'd do all those songs.
Yeah. Like on Diamonds and Dirt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But we did Above and Beyond on that record, and Buck said, "That's great, but you could have changed one note of it." I said, "No, we did it." I think Paul played the solo like Bromley,
Yeah.
even, you know. I can't remember.
Well, it's a great tune.
Yeah, it is.
Most of your solos are they more off the cuff, or are they composed, or how do a lot of them come together?
They just evolve.
Yeah.
You know, and what's interesting is I find that my first impression is generally got some validity to it, you know, and then I refine it. It may start, and I'll play for 30, 45 minutes, go, hey, play me the first thing I played. Let me, you know, kind of, and I just think soloing is no different than the writing of the song. It has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And,
Yeah.
you know, I don't have an idea in my head of what I think it should be, you know. I just start playing, and it finds its way to me,
Yeah.
you know.
Most of your solos, would they be overdubbed? I mean, or would you? Yeah.
Yeah.
So you would track the song, and then would y'all have like an overdub session later on where it's just you and the engineer and the producer, or would you have everyone there? Or?
Yeah. Everybody's gone, so it won't waste time. I mean,
So
you can't-
everyone's not smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, well, you can't afford to be doing overdubs while you got 6-7 guys on the payroll paying them session fees and all that stuff. You got to track while you got the guys there, and then you sing and do the overdubs later when you can take your time and you're not making somebody else wait for you. That's a lot of tension when you have to play and there's a bunch of people waiting. But now that I do all my recording here, I take as long as I want. I don't have to be in a hurry, and sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. You know, lay it down, try it again.
Yeah,
another day.
Try another day.
Yeah.
What of your solos are you most proud of?
I think Liza Jane's fairly iconic for Telecaster kind of solos. One More Last Chance might be another one. But there's a solo on a record I did some years ago. What was this song called? Me and My Girl.
You can hear a little, tip of the hat to Mark Knopfler.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't start playing with my fingers until I saw him doing it, and he was doing the
Yeah, that's a cool groove.
And that groove's way deeper than
Yeah.
swings more, you know.
Yeah.
It's got more dance in it or something, but
Yeah.
and the difference in sound, I've been through this many times, but when you play versus
Yeah.
it has more, just the notes just
It blooms differently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you willing to play a little bit of Liza Jane?
I don't know that I can.
Okay. Are you gonna play it on the Les Paul? That's great.
Why not? I don't know how it starts. I just know it's in my head when the band's playing it.
You going on right
You know,
now?
it's composed, but it had been edited.
Okay.
You know, and I would take a chunk out from another pass and another chunk out from another pass and
Yeah.
and meld it together. I didn't just play that
Right.
from start to finish. I've learned how to play it from start to finish.
Right. Okay. That
You
makes
know?
sense. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think that's the way everybody does it.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah.
Just keep
Put it-
playing
put it-
until you find something you like.
Yeah, and then put them together. The bends on it are really cool. When you do the bend, you know, because those are kind of like Clarence White, kind of bendery kind of licks, because you're bending one note up to the same one that's being
Exactly.
fretted, and you climb up the neck with that, and it's a really
is that the-
snaky, cool sound. Yeah,
Yeah, and it's critical that all those bends be in tune.
that's right.
It's real easy to bend past.
That's right.
It's easy to not bend to it.
Yeah.
You know, I got a funny story. Book and I are great friends, and he's playing with me these shows at the Ryman. But I like those Duesenberg guitars, but they're longer.
Yes.
You know, so I talked to Nathan, who runs the company in the States, and I said I have a hard time playing those guitars because the extra length.
Yeah.
I know it's a little bit longer, but what I'm used to bending a note, I have to bend it further
Yes.
because it's longer. And they made me a guitar that is more of the regular scale length or whatever
Yeah.
than they do.
That kind of brings up the string question, because it's the same thing with strings. It's like when you put really light gauge strings on a guitar, you have to physically bend that string further for it to get up to the pitch, and it's kind of a weird thing. And one of the things I noticed was you always use 10s, on your guitars, and you didn't use the 9s or even lighter or 8s or anything like Albert and James and some of the
No.
other guitar players used.
I tried once and I couldn't even play.
Yeah.
You know, one of those early gigs with Albert, we were playing in Australia, and I tried to put 8s or something on my guitar, and I was just, oh, what have you done? You know.
Yeah.
It was a nightmare, but it's also, a bigger string sounds fatter.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I'll use different strings for different, guitars. Like I'll take Italian 2.5 step down, or any guitar 2.5 step down, maybe one a whole step down, and use 11s, because then it compensates for not having as much tension.
Yep.
And every guitar is different, but every guitar likes a certain thing on it, so.
As you've gotten older, have you had to lower any of your songs? Like, have you had to? No.
No.
Wow.
That's remarkable.
It is remarkable.
Some people's voices hang in there and stay in there forever. Like whenever you come around, I cut in B. I do it in C now.
Yeah.
It's a half step higher,
Yeah.
which is stupid, but I like playing the guitar in C
Yeah.
better than I do in B.
Yeah.
And I like playing this chord better than this chord. And so some of the stuff, I'll change keys on a song just because of how it will flow with writing a set. And when I'm doing a set, it's like sequencing a record.
Yeah.
And key, the way certain songs follow other songs, is critical because of the key they're in too. I think about all that nerd stuff.
Yeah. And hitting on some of the players have been in your band and said you have always had an amazing band, no matter what.
Yeah.
You've always put And to me, it kind of goes back to being in those great bluegrass bands, seeing the hot band, being in the Cherry Bombs. You've always
Well, yeah, Rodney and Emmy taught me that. Respect those guys. You know, most people take a road band out and don't pay them any money, and you know, 3-door room and whatever, you know, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't never want to do that.
Yeah.
And I had to deal with my guys back when I was really touring a lot and doing well. I said, I'll make you a deal if you come play in this band. I said, if I do better, you will too. There won't be a base pay. There'll be if I make more, you'll make more.
Yeah.
We'll make this thing work for everybody.
Yeah.
Oftentimes their bonus checks were bigger than their normal salaries, you know. But, you know, because I've been that guy, you know.
You've held on to good and even as you've had, you know,
I've had people treat me good.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And then you've had John Huey and Paul Franklin and J.D. Manis and all these cats, you know, play in your band. Yeah.
But, you know, once again, I think that they would all tell you I give them the respect they deserve, you know, and so, yeah, I could have made more money if I'd have cut back here and cut back there, but it didn't matter too much to me.
And you're particular about the way, like, at one point I was talking to Jed Hughes, and I asked him, I said, what is it like, you know, playing with Vince? And he said, Vince hears everything.
Yeah.
And he said that you're paying attention to everything, and that you get, you know, like, you prefer like different voicings and things like that of chords and things like that at times, and it's like you're on it.
But I'm not, you know, I give everybody I always say the record's a real good place to start.
Yeah.
If you want to find something to enhance that, go ahead. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not a note for note. I'm in a band that's a note for note, you know, expectation of everything you reproduce with the Eagles. But that's the way it should be. You know, I can't imagine not hearing those songs and not hearing the iconic lines, the iconic backgrounds, everything that made the arranging of those records so great.
Yeah,
they deserve it.
Yeah, the Eagles are. Yeah, you have to reproduce it exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But you know, with us, some things like I like to hear the intro to When I Call Your Name, like Barry Beckett played it.
Yeah.
I like to hear, you know, just certain things. Hey, that was pretty.
Yeah.
That was a pretty valuable part of that song. And
Very
familiar.
valuable.
And, you know, playing with those guys with Don and Joe and Timothy has just been a great lesson to relearn how important songs are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you got great songs, you're going to win.
And they do have they have a catalog of great tunes where they just play what do y'all do, 2 hours or
it's just like, oh yeah, I know that one. Yeah, I know that one. I know that one.
Yeah.
Pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
So they're exactly as they should be. Furthest thing from a jam band, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Vince. I really appreciate you letting us
hope you got something you can
invade
use.
your home. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Glad we finally got to do this.
Thank you.
Yeah, brother.
Yeah.